You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We love MotoGP. Hello and welcome to Missed Apex MotoGP Podcast. This is a show put together by MotoGP fans pretending to be experts. We aim to have a race review show ready for a midweek commute. We may just be punters, but we love to talk. In the hot and humid conditions of Malaysia, Alex Marquez kept his cool to secure P2 in the championship and his third win of the season. The Bagnaia enigma continues to throw surprises as he seemed back to his former self, albeit just as unlucky, whilst Johan Mir continues Honda's strong end to the season. As ever, I am your host Kyle Power, and today I'm joined in the virtual shed by some fellow MotoGP enthusiasts. It's Dutch Journo Supreme co-host Jules Seegers. How's it going, Jules?
What's up, Kyle? I felt we had a good MotoGP weekend. Lots to talk about. Yay. But still, I find myself a bit sad because with these overseas races behind us, it's only 2 left for the season.
Oof, yeah, only 2. It is drawing to an end. And somebody who always sits as a means to an end on a podcast and usually gets the final say, it's the tyre-obsessed trumpeter, Matt Trumpets. How's it going, Matt?
It's going well. You know, I noticed Pedro Acosta has a real habit of throwing motorbikes at the walls until he gets one that goes fast. So I'm just wondering, should we now call him Pedro Acostly?
Oof, could do. That's a good one. You've been sitting on that most of the season.
Oh, yeah. It came to me when I was watching qualifying, and I've been waiting to deploy it all weekend.
Excellent. Well, I've got my own little one of them I might deploy later or not. So, weekend overview then coming in. Big news coming into the weekend was Marc Marquez has declared and Ducati declared that he's out for the rest of the season. He's going to miss the Valencia pre-season test, which is quite a biggie to heal up his collarbone. But we may be seeing an interesting replacement on this bike. I did mention last week, but Nicola Bulliger now is relieved of his World Superbike duties. He's actually getting a test, I think, this week in Jerez on the MotoGP bike because he's actually signed up to be their 2026 development rider as well. And depending on how well that test goes and is pretty quick, he may fill in for the final 2 rounds of the season. So that'll be very interesting to see Bulliger in MotoGP. Augusto Fernandez is back with the Yamaha V4 project again for their second race weekend, and a different iteration is coming in. Fabio Quartararo has not been too happy with Yamaha in the press. Bit more from Jules on that later. Pol Espargaro is still replacing Maverick Vinales at the, well, not beleaguered KTM, but at the improving and coming back KTM. But the beleaguered Maverick Vinales has been amazing this season, and we haven't seen him for ages. So get well soon, Maverick. Onto the championship standings, and it's all eyes on the battle for P3 between Marco Bezzecchi and Pecco Bagnaia, and behind them for 5th, 6th and 7th, we've got Acosta, De Gianantonio and Frankie Morbidelli with the Intra VR46 Academy battle still raging. So, on to practice then, Jules, and quite an interesting one.
Yeah, it was an interesting Friday, not in the least because we had some rain. The end of FP1 was hit by a very sudden but pretty severe shower, and that ended that practice early. And you could see in the rest of the Friday that caused some riders to lag a bit behind, not being able to do the Friday program as they ideally wanted. And it saw us a few names, big names, missing out on Q2. For instance, Bagnaia, although he had a better Friday than in the last couple of weekends, as he didn't finish his first outing directly with entering the pit again and shaking his head. So that was promising. But also Bezzecchi, Aldeguer, and also Raul Fernandez, which meant that the winners of the last 3 Grand Prix were all out of Q2 directly. So yeah, interesting Friday. Alex Marquez crashing 2 times. And, you know, everybody was looking at him as one of the maybe the favorite, with Mark out and Alex having topped the testing sessions at Sepang in February. But he crashed twice. But did make it into Q2. So that was impressive. All in all, an entertaining Friday, I'd say.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And you mentioned Aldeguer there, who after FP1 was like looking really, really good, and during sort of practice, as you say, like arguably he looked like the strongest pace, and I was tipping him for like the rest of the weekend. I was like, my money, Matt, is going to be on Aldeguer, but as Jules just said, yeah, he couldn't quite put it together, got caught out by the rain, and it never really materialized.
Well, and this is the thing that really interested me because it wasn't just you, TV comms, everyone was like, Aldeguer, Aldeguer, Aldeguer. Yeah, he won. But again, if you go back to what his real strength as a recently graduated Moto2 rider is, and then you look at how the Ducati wants to be ridden, this track really wasn't entirely in the pocket for him. It would seem to me it was much more of a Marquez track because you do have those really strong braking zones. You have those long drags on traction, which suit the Ducati, but the Ducati driven the way. I say driven, ridden the way. You know what I
Okay.
meant. The way it was intended to by Dall'Igna, who designed it. He didn't intend for you to carry lots of corner speed. He intended for you to smash the brakes, rip the throttle, and wind the thing up as rapidly as possible.
Yeah, and with the sweltering sort of heat, even though there was a little bit of rain, it's Malaysia, it's humid, it is super hot. The riders really, really suffer here, but also the tires suffer. And Aldeguer has proven track record this year to be arguably the best person on looking after tires. He's the second coming of Bastianini, or coming in here to look at the tires. So I thought he was going to be looking really, really good. And as I always find I tend to do, I tend to always sort of like underrate Alex Marquez a little bit. He was there, and particularly after Jules said he had his 2 crashes in the practice session, and I was like, oh, here we go. He's slipping back into the old Alex Marquez again. But anyway, on to Q1, and Aldeguer managed to get himself through as well, and Bagnaia as well. So Bagnaia was looking good, Jules, in practice. As you said, he's not been doing his usual head shaking. The bike's been doing a bit of shaking, but it's been looking a bit more stable than it has been.
Yeah, it actually reminded me of the good old Pecco weekends where Friday would start rather, slowly, relatively speaking, and then he'd just, get himself up to speed, and then by the time qualifying started on Saturday, he'd be like pole or P2, somewhere around that. And it was actually kind of like that during the Saturday. He made it to Q2 together with Aldeguer, and then he did Q2 with only 1 flying lap, while the others had 2 outings. Because of him doing Q1, he wanted to spare or didn't have any fresh softs left for the Saturday. So he did only 1 run, and he put it on pole. And I thought after, I mean, the horrendous weekends he had just had, I felt like, okay, that, you're in Q2 for the first time in like 3 weekends, and then to like leave it to 1 flying lap and then nail it. Yeah, I thought that's the class that he luckily for us still is able to show when the stars are aligned.
And I think equally important for Ducati, it was clear they had A and B bikes, but that even the bike that he liked best wasn't really compliant in the way he wanted it to be, but it was a problem they solved across the weekend. And it wasn't, oh, we just showed up Friday and put it together and suddenly he could ride it, like Motegi, where it was just like, oh, yeah, hey, look at that. No, this was a proper grind of a weekend for the engineers and for Bagnaia. And it just continues to confirm that there is something funky going on with that bike that is obviously going to have a feedback loop with the rider confidence. And
Well, in
and
his hands at least.
the fact that they solved it, maybe that's really important and useful learnings, especially looking forward to the end of the season and the test with regards to what they're going to bring as their 26 bike. If they're beginning to be able to solve it across a weekend, well, now maybe they're putting the mystery in, and I do hate that they're not going to tell us what it is, though. Come on.
No, they
Tell
never
us.
will. They never will.
Tell us. Okay.
Because I don't think. Well, we'll talk about Bagnaia a bit later. We've got a whole little segment on him, but I think there may be more than material bits that are going wrong with that package at some point. So someone else, another manufacturer who was struggling a little bit was Aprilia's. No Aprilia's in Q2 at all. And I think Bez qualified 14th as the top Aprilia. One little bit before we move on too much was the Aldeguer binning it coming back into the paddock. So he crashed in Q1 and then crashed again as he was leaning onto his bike. And that was hilarious. And I think it was that second crash in the paddock as he tried to get into the garage. It was all a bit hesitant, crashed into a racking. It was that which damaged the front fairing. Would have got would have got ride-out devices and all sorts of electronics in there. I think it was that separate crash which prevented him from using his number one bike. So Aldeguer through Q1 fastest on his second bike. Very impressive indeed. But yeah, so Acosta was looking quite good, and he's fallen foul, Jules, of this new rule that we have in MotoGP, whereas so to prevent people bit of skullduggery in the gravel trap, maybe putting it on pole and then accidentally having a bit of an off and flailing around the gravel trap, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jules, like if it's the final 3 minutes of qualifying, you're not allowed to restart your bike.
Yeah, correct. We see this pretty often, of course, the yellow flags in the last minutes of qualifying, which ruins other riders' laps. And you could like stall the recovery and the yellow flag disappearing by trying to pick up your bike and trying to get it going again. So this rule prevents you from doing that. It means that if you're going down in the last 3 minutes, you're not allowed to try and regain or how do you say this? Try and get back on track. And yeah. So and this was installed after, I think it was Alex Rins at Mandalika when he was finally doing well in qualifying. Then he crashed out and he kept staying there in the gravel trap for minutes and minutes. But
He was in no
Acosta.
hurry.
Yeah, indeed. And Acosta, he didn't really have any regard for this new rule, and he just, tried to get his bike going again, and then he got back on track, and he threw a lot of the gravel on the track, and while he was in P1, at that moment. So it made me think like, yeah, okay, is this like, semi-deliberate, all of this, but eventually he got knocked off pole anyway. But it was interesting to see, and especially because he said afterwards, like, yeah, but if we go down, there's not one brain cell thinking, oh, let me look at the clock. Do I have 3 minutes left or not? Yeah, you just want your bike back and get back on track again.
I was actually laughing about that because I think they wound up fining him €2,000. And I don't know about you, but if you're going to fine me $2 for going 30 miles over the speed limit, then I'm not really going to worry about that very much. It doesn't seem like a rule with a whole lot of bite to it.
Yeah,
I would
no
say
sporting penalty, is there? Like it's just a financial. You'll just take the financial hit. I can see that being changed in the next couple of rounds, maybe.
I would bring in the IndyCar rule, which is you lose your fastest lap if you do it.
That's
in
a
the
good
session.
one.
Because then
that's quite interesting.
That's actually a fair gamble. Like if you're properly like, I've got enough time, I want to get across the line once more. But if I do that, I give up where I am right now and I go back to my, assuming you've already set a time at 3 minutes, you would have.
Well, Trumpets for Stewart then. Trumpets for Stewart. That'll be quite good. So Pecco Bagnaia gets an awesome pole position with only one shot. Alex Marquez in second. Morbidelli third on the front row, looking really good. Quartararo in fourth. Again, Yamaha's dragging a lap time at the Yamahas, but then they did go and fade. Acosta fifth after all of that. Aldeguer only sixth. Mir P7. Digi a rather stealth 8th place. We didn't see much of Digi. And Zarco, the second Honda in the top 10 in P9. So as we said, Bez was only in P14. Raul Fernandez, last time out winner, was only 15th. And Bastianini in P19, because we say that because he had a bit of a storm through the field in the main GP. But first, before that, was the sprint. Okay, so on to the sprint then. And Jules, I loved the like the opening sort of a couple of sort of laps battling, Bagnaia just gets the whole shot and disappears, basically. But behind, you've got Alex Marquez and Acosta, and then Mir, what I think was the good concentrate, because it was Mir coming up and having an epic battle with Morbidelli and Fabio Quartararo.
Yeah, it was a great opening few laps, because Fabio Quartararo was a bit like a boxer in the corner of the ring, getting a hit left and hit right before he knows it, because he had a good fight with Morbidelli, who was feisty this weekend. And then right after Morbidelli hit him with an overtake, there was Mir coming through. So that was a good sight. And I thought the move that Alex did on Acosta, because Acosta was P2 after the start. And I think it was only turn 4 where Alex just threw it down the inside and gave him a proper block pass, where you didn't really expect it, because it was a pretty daring move. And I think he was happy himself as well that brakes made him allowed him to make this move. It was really the game was on, and it didn't really matter. Bagnaia was taking off, because there was lots to watch during the only 10. They only lasted 10 laps, but that was great.
Yeah, indeed. It was really good. And it actually, you shared a video in our group chat during the week of the Bagnaia Martin battle from the opening laps of this race last year, which was really good. And it was a bit like that. We saw lots of people shoving it back up the inside again. We saw it again on Sunday. It was really, really good. So it was really nice battle in there.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of Sepang, in my opinion, because it has a couple of corners that allow you to ride different lines. And you can go wide, or at least it looks like you're going wide, but you can cut back really sharp. You can take some of the turns really, really close to the apex, so that it allows a lot of racing, especially on motorcycles. And and it showed what a good track can do, because certainly this season, but even I think at the Mandalika race, we were like, it's so hard to get close or even overtake, and you see a lot of similar gaps between riders, and nothing really happens. But this track really works, even for this MotoGP formula.
Yeah, and one of the things that really struck me, I think it was in the sprint and in the race, but I'm going to go back to qualifying a tiny bit here, was how differently the motorcycles did the different bikes in different sectors. And like specifically from qualifying, I'm thinking of how far Quartararo was up. And then in the last sector, like how much time Bagnaia just sucked out of him as they were going through the cycle. It was like almost 2/10 faster. And then you get to the race and you see him, Quartararo now, and you're going to laugh at me for criticizing him, but like you're on a Yamaha and look at where you were passing people. Like the last turn before the sector where you were 4/10 slower, like,
But it's the only place he can. That's the thing, is just being a pest
like,
to try and get himself in there because he can.
I understand it, but you're never going to defend that. I was wanting a little more strategery amongst the other riders chasing. Like, okay, you've got the good corner speed. I've got the good straight speed. I give you a slipstream. You know what I mean? Like recognize where your bike is strong and press your advantage there. But on the other hand, it was a heck of a battle, so I can't complain
That's
too
the
much.
thing. It's good for us, isn't it? It's because
Yeah.
it was a proper like gloves off scrap, and it's
Yes.
nice to see this sort of like scrap. There was like 3 or 4 of them all together, like properly scrapping. And as you said, great observation of the different strengths of the bike. So Fabio, the only chance he has to is to keep it tight, jam it up in a braking zone, knowing full well he's going to get rinsed down the next 2 straights, but just basically brake stupidly late and be just a general menace and a pest to try to disrupt people enough that I think if he could maybe get away and break the slipstream, then maybe he might be able to get away himself, because he's pretty strong pace overall, but that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, this goes right back to Miller at Phillip Island. It's the same thing. You know, if you can get away at the right point in the lap, you have the absolute lap time to bust a gap. But if you don't, you were just, and on that Yamaha especially, you were just a sitting duck for the KTMs and for the Ducatis.
Absolutely. Somebody who tried to do the Quattraro move was actually Luca Marini, who we've seen the Honda was pretty good. So Mir and Bez were making really good strides through the field, but Marini was trying to do the same. And we're going to have a little game of whose fault is it? Because Marini, this is his first crash in any MotoGP session this year. The only other time he's crashed was that horrific one he had in Suzuka for the Suzuka 8 hours, and he completely smashed himself up. But Jules, I find this absolutely incredible. This is the first time Marini has crashed. He's been getting some good results as well. But the most important question is, whose fault was it? Pol Espargaro or Marini's?
I actually looked this back in preparation for this show because I wanted to be sure. But as much as I like Luca Marini, and I like this this achievement of only having your first crash in the second last race to go, I felt he took a lot of risks because he was I think it's turn 12. I can be wrong, but it's the long turn before you get on the back straight, right?
The
If
Rossi
I'm
Marquez corner.
Yeah. And almost all the riders take it pretty wide, and then they launch themselves up onto that straight. But he took that turn pretty close to the apex, really on the inside. And I think he was actually on the curbs trying to squeeze in himself in that little space that Paul had there. But I think Paul never saw him coming because of that, because he just didn't expect him to be in that space, and he couldn't see him because Pol Espargaro was still very much in his lean. I'm leaning right now, but nobody.
Yeah, if you can see Jules, he's probably trying to get his elbow down onto his desk,
leaning out of the camera view. But I think he could never see him because he was still in that lean. So I thought it was. I can see why Marini thought like, oh, there's a gap, but I think he should not have taken the risks, because he would have taken it was P8 they were fighting for. I think he would have taken it anyway.
That's a fair point. Matt, do you think Jules is wrong?
Well, I mean, what kind of a show would we have if I didn't argue with everything just out of sheer cussedness, as we like to say where I come from? No. All right. So, okay, I'll fess up. End of the day, I do kind of think it's on Marini. But honestly, the space was there. I think the move was on. I think it was a valid move. And the thing that I'm not sure about is, for him, was it just because he is such a clean rider that he misjudged it slightly? Or was he just like, it's almost like if he had just not thought about it at all and gone? Because that's a move where if you are alongside enough, it works. But he wasn't quite alongside enough. And the room was there. Can you drive in? Can you ride your bike into it? Yes, you can. But if you don't get all the way there, the result is going to make everybody unhappy. And so, yeah.
Oh, so you're saying he should have maybe committed a bit more, let the brake off, and just made it a proper bit of a rude sort of block pass. But because he's seen it, thinking, oh no, I'm going to try to be nice, they've had because it's pretty much their wheels are level. It's a side-by-side fairing, and he basically just falls off the inside of the bike. I agree with both of what you've kind of said and bits of it. So Jules made a very good comment about, like, Pol just didn't see him. Pol was looking up the track. He's hanging off the inside of the bike and he's not looking there. And then I think Pol said this afterwards. He said he's very sorry to be like a contributor to Marini's first crash, but there's nothing more he could have done. And they spoke about it. And Race Directions decided to look at it. And I think they come to the right decision, which I agree with both of you. I think it's maybe if you had to apportion blame, it was slightly more on Marini, but I think it's just two lines converging. But yeah, Matt, I think I agree with you more there. Like, if he was a bit ruder about it, it probably would have worked in his favour a little bit more. So something that was working in somebody's favour, though, was Bagnai's pace, which was insane, and he was just disappearing, different time zone to everyone else. Really good to see again. But after all of like the battling was going on, we had Aldeguer closing in on Acosta for third and then mugging him for third in a really good little battle and getting third place. But it was Alex Marquez who come home in second place to secure his second in the championship. So we'll talk about him a little bit later, but what a great achievement to get second in the championship. Aldeguer was third, but again, this I can't swear, can I? This blinking fudge-me, call it whatnot, cod's wallop of tyre penalty pressures. Oh God, tyre pressure penalty rules that we all hate in this sport. And it's unusual to have it in the sprint. We saw it in Brno, wasn't it? The Brno where the Ducati riders had it in the sprint race. So Aldeguer loses his P3, his podium, and that also secured him top rookie honours for the championship as well. So it's a double whammy for the Gresini team. But that drops him down to P7 or P8, I believe, because he had an 8-second penalty. So he's still got top rookie honours, but yeah, he got he ended up, he still got to stand on the podium, but he lost it afterwards. So it was Bagnaia taking an awesome win. Alex Marquez, a very steady second. Aldeguer, a third on the road, but it actually ended up being demoted, and it was Acosta in third. Morbidelli, a very good fourth. Quartararo fifth, and Bezzecchi managed to get sixth from 14th on the grid, which is quite good going as he heads into the Grand Prix. So onto the Grand Prix review, and as ever, we like to mix these and mash these up into sort of 2 or 3 major topics, and we'll sort of explore around there. So the first thing I want to talk about first is, we just mentioned him, Alex Marquez, P2 in the championship, his third win of the season after a brilliant, absolutely brilliant sort of race and a weekend he put together really after a bit of a scrappy start, and then just what an achievement. Jules, I know you're the biggest fan of the Marquez brothers. Just sum up his season here and what an achievement this is.
I put on my blue sky that I thought was a really solid performance from him during the weekend. I mean, to get second and to win the Sunday race. It's a lot easier said that Mark is gone and he has been second to Mark pretty much all season, so surely he wins. But still, if you saw how dominant Bagnaia was during the sprint, getting pole, just imagine that brings new pressure to him, because you immediately get a narrative of, see, if Bagnaia gets it right, then the Alex is nowhere. But it's not like that. And I think we all thought that what you often see with year-old bikes, that somewhere halfway down the season, when they're all through all their development and the new bikes still get development, that they kind of fade away. But Alex didn't, and I thought he had a bit of a wobbly phase somewhere around the midpoint of the season. But still, I mean, even if Bagnaia wouldn't have these weird races like we've seen him, I don't think he would have lost second spot. So and this is the last thing I'll say before Matt can add to it. But it makes me really curious to see what he is able to do when he's on the same bike as his brother, as Bagnaia, as DG next season.
He might be wanting the 24 back. You never know. Now, what I like about this, all right, so I will just start with the hottest of all takes. I'm not convinced if Mark took the same tire as Bagnaia took for the race. I'm not convinced he wins if he's there.
Alex,
I think Alex wins. If Mark was there on that Ducati with Bagnaia and they're both on the medium tire and he's on the soft, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced, but I think he's already beat his brother properly this year. I think what Jules calls a wobble makes me laugh. Compare it to his previous seasons, that's like not even a hiccup. That's just like a oops, oh yeah. That's just like the merest of perturbances in the force, if you will. He is a different rider. And I will say that as far as the sprint goes, well, come on, he's locking down. He's locking down that second place. Can you imagine how tight he was? Like, oh yeah, sure, winning a championship, that's great. But how often have we had a brother pairing that finished first and second in the world championships? Oh, right, that's
Never.
never, ever, ever been done. And who is the pressure on? Oh yeah, it's on his shoulders. It's not on his brother's shoulders. So yeah, he must have been like so tight, staring at that finish line, waiting for it to come. And you could see it in the way he raced the next day, because it was clear he was like, okay, look, whatever, I got it done, but I want to prove that I deserve it as much as my brother did, as much as we both do. I want to validate my talent and my deserving of this honor. And he brought it home in spectacular fashion. It was just a great, a well-written, very smart weekend, beginning to end from him, and so far away from what we're used to thinking of him as. And I think that gives a lot of people problems, because it's a different narrative than they're used to hearing. And I think it's hard for journalists who are used to covering him, because you're used to what he was, not what he is now. And seeing him out of the shadow of his brother, was Mark even there? His parents were there, but yeah, no, he is a rider unleashed in a way that I've not seen him before, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, well said. I've never really rated him, and I'm probably guilty of underrating him quite a lot. And you touched on it there, out of the shadow of his brother. But a lot of people seem to forget, myself included, that he's a double world champion in his own right. He's a Moto3 and a Moto2 world champion, but he's always been scrappy, quite crashy in MotoGP, and it's amazing. Take Mark out, and Alex is world champion essentially. Just Marc Marquez is doing Marc Marquez things all season, and it's just Alex would be champion. And as you said, it was a really controlled race, but aggression when he needed it. Brilliant point about the pressure of the championship going, because Bagnaia got the whole shot again in the main race and looked like he was going to scoot off. I mean, we'll talk about Bagnaia in a bit, but he made the tyre gamble. But Alex Marquez realised this, and he was very keen and put quite a hard move and instantly engaged into battle, thinking, no, I need to get to the front. And his comments afterwards I found really interesting, actually. He said he actually made a bit of a cocky mistake, went into a bit arrogant, because he knew he had really good pace. I think he was coming into this weekend expecting an easy win, and then when you end up on your ass in practice and then get beaten by, because you never know what's going to happen with Bagnaia turns up, is like, oh, what's going on here? And then as soon as that championship's out of the way, he's like, bang. And you can absolutely go for it. And on this subject of like really happy with Alex, I just think it's such a shame that actual Mark wasn't there, because it's the first time you say like the brothers 1-2 in the championship go and celebrate, and Mark's not going to be there on track with him to celebrate at all. Oh yeah, and I just think we've kind of been robbed a bit about that. I mean, probably Jules' sanity has probably been saved a little bit about that, because I know he's been not the happiest Marquez brother loving supporters, and I'm pretty sure Jules has an effigy of them both in his garden, and he sets fire to it every time they finish 1-2. So petrol and pollution is down in Jules' area of Holland due to this. But I think it's quite I think it's a shame that Mark's not there, because imagine the party they're going to be having, and Mark's watching at home is there. But also something I think this is really nice for the team. It's Grassini, and we can talk about Aldeguer a bit, and actually just how great the Grassini team is, Jules. It just looks like a great family atmosphere in that team.
It really does. Last season, we of course had world champions, also a satellite team with the Pramac team and Jorge Martin securing the title. But this is still different, because it's just like you say, it's a family team. It's not a team born out of a sponsor wanting to throw money at it. But founded by Fausto Gresini, the two-time 125 world champion. Starting your team, and I think there are a lot of examples of teams being started up, struggling to really make an impact, but very slowly they have built this, and very sensibly took this partnership with Ducati. And and then still you have to make it count, because you don't have to look too many doors next to them for instance, the VR46 team, who have uh, on paper an even better Ducati bike, and they are not as consistent, not as well run, and so it's I feel in a world where all is so professional and very capitalist driven, that a family team, and which looking for the word, which carries the family values and the character of that team so much. I really love to see it.
And this is where you gotta mention Carcetti, because can we just run down the writers he's mentored
Oh
to
yeah,
other
and one
places?
with
No, go ahead,
yes,
because you know him better than
yes.
I.
So I believe with Frankie Cardetti, the crew chief, he was and this is Grassini just in general sort of thing. So the last few years there's been Fabio Di Gianantonio. He came from nowhere, almost finishing last, and all of a sudden they changed the setup upside down and started setting the bike up weird, and he wins, which was amazing. You've had Anea Bastianini. I'm not sure if Frankie Cardetti thing. We've had obviously Marc Marquez last year that he crew chiefed, and now he's crew chiefing Aldeguer, who's got a rookie win out of it as well. Who else has been wins for them in recency? So there's this small independent team without a factory package, without the factory bike. As Jules said, it's the VR46 guys or the Pramac team that had the factory bikes. So they're on bought or rented, hired 1-year-old machinery, and they've managed to win a race the last sort of 5-6 seasons, which is insane. And it's absolutely lovely. And I love the character they do. Before each round, they make a poster, and they're always taking the mick, and they have some really funny sort of posters gone down it. And yeah, it's just warm, fuzzy feeling territory for me. I just think they're a fantastic team. Nadia, I always murder her second name. I can never say her second name properly. Someone put me out of my misery.
Padovani.
That's the one. The team manager, she's absolutely brilliant, and it looks like such a great atmosphere. One of my biggest regrets is actually for MotoGP is actually Mark insisting on going to the factory team. I wanted him to take the factory bike but stay in the Grassini team and win the championship with them, because I'm pretty sure he would have still won the championship with them. That would have been awesome with his brother. So brilliant team. And this weekend they've secured the top rookie in the championship with Aldeguer. They've secured P2 in the championship with Alex Marquez, and top independent team all in the same weekend. I mean, they've cleaned up, apart from the factory Ducati team, they have cleaned the books, and it's absolutely amazing to see. And it's great. Long may it continue. And I think next year with Alex Marquez, they will be for the first time be getting a factory bike as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they develop, or what the bike's going to be with the Ducati mystery. And I think that's quite a nice segue actually to move on to our second topic, and that is the ongoing Bagnaia mystery. From essentially last, Jules, in Phillip Island on the final pace, to dominating the sprint and being on a different planet, just what on earth?
Yeah, I mean, last time out, I said, I mean, what's there to say? Nobody knows the answer. Nobody knows what's going on. I think what makes it even more of a mystery is what Ducati has said and not said about it, and they steer away from suspecting the engine as the main problem and point to all kinds of directions except the engine. Oh no, not our baby. But we don't know, and the only thing that we know from this weekend, pretty much the only thing, and Matt pointed to this earlier in this episode already, is that it didn't come the way it came at Motegi, because at Motegi it was in a snap of a finger, he was there, and he was top of the timesheets, and he never left there the whole weekend, and they still didn't really know why. I mean, yeah, they had a good test, but still. And this weekend they built towards the pace, and I think that is very important to them. I mean, you need to know, you need to understand why am I fast, because else, you're still a ball in the big ball of other lottery balls.
Yeah, and they don't seem to understand this and know. And it's very, very odd. I'm going to get my Formula One reference in now just to annoy some of the listeners, because I like to get one in per episode. But I think this is the greatest comparison I could see for Bagnaia. It seems when the bike is working well and it's to his exact sort of small window that he can ride it in, he's almost untouchable, like in the sprint. Like, he's absolutely amazing. And I don't know why, this gave me a flashback from the 2012 Formula One season and Jenson Button in McLaren with his teammate Lewis Hamilton, and the car was quite unbalanced sometimes, and Hamilton was winning races, Canada springs to mind, and lapping his world champion teammate like Button. And Button was a similar thing. He'd either be on the pace one weekend, and then the next weekend, if the car's not in the exact window where he needs it, he's nowhere. And I think Bagnaia struggles a bit with this adaptability across the thing, and particularly being sat next to someone like Marc Marquez, who will give him a wheelie bin and he'll drag it around the circuit and get a lap time out of it. And I think oddly, this has been really kind of exposed this year. And if they can't get the bike in a quite a specific sort of window for him, he just sort of completely just vanishes off the face of the earth in pace. And it's bizarre to see that from a double world champion. It's really odd.
Yeah, well, if we're going to go Formula One references, I will see you that in a minute. But it is bizarre. My only beef with you about that small window is I don't really think he has a small window. But I think whatever this parameter is an extremely load-bearing column of his window. So if that's gone, he's gone. And you're right, as far as adaptability, he is the first to admit, like, look, I'm not the most adaptable guy. But if you give me the tool I need, I will crush you and hear the lamentations of your womenfolk, or whatever that quote from Conan is. And we saw that in the sprint, absolutely. And it's interesting to me, because you always get upset with me when I say it's always about the tires. But at the end of the day, the point of the rider and the point of the bike is to make the tires work properly. And I think you see, especially with him, he talks a lot about the feel. He talks a lot about the front end. And if with the Michelin front tire, with the construction they have, if you're not able to work the front tire because you don't have the feel, and I think this actually happened in the Grand Prix a little bit. You could see, I know he had the puncture, but you could see it looked like he was starting to run out of rear while he was
that was the
trying to
thing.
get the front medium, because folks, we haven't explained it to you, not everybody used the medium tire. Now, 55C track temperatures starting soft seemed insane to me, but it wound up looking like, based on who finished, absolutely the right call. But if you're not able to get that medium front working, if you can't work it hard enough because you don't quite have the feel, or the brakes aren't right, or they're overheating, or you have to do whatever, then you are going to have no performance at all. And I think the mystery of the whole bike, I know they're willing to throw their ride height device under the bus at this point and not the engine, but the mystery of the whole bike is, on certain tracks, he simply can't work the front tire in the way it needs to be worked for that whole bike to perform properly.
And this was the reason why he took the tyre gamble, and was one of only sort of three sort of big riders that actually went for the medium tyre gamble. Bezzecchi was the other one, and Marini as well went for the medium front tyre. And the soft rears, just a quick note on the soft rears, I think Miller said this and a few people did this. They tried it 3 times during the weekend, and the medium rear just was not working. They just could not fire it up. So the soft, which meant they had to really manage their tyres massively. But the medium front seemed a bit of a risk. And Bagnaia said he got the medium because he wasn't that confident on the brakes on the soft. So the medium's a bit of a firmer construction. And you could see the bike looked awesome. It was out of shape, but out of shape in a nice way on the brakes. Before, when he's been struggling, we've seen it go sideways and then kick back. And he kind of has a bit of a fishtail and it gets a bit squirrely on the way into the corners. But this one looked like the Bagnaia of old, last of the late breakers, holding a beautifully controlled slide going into the corner. And this is really sort of enabling him to battle hard. He had a fantastic sort of a free battle with Acosta, and it was like going really hard. And he managed to rebuff like Acosta's advances and was sitting in second for ages. in the Grand Prix, and this is what I find really impressive about him. He has solid pace. He's on a medium tyre. So I'm going to put a question to the panel now. If he didn't get the puncture, do you think he could have gone on and challenged Alex, Jules?
I do. You could see Alex overtook him really early in the race with a pretty bold move again. But he kept the gap at 1.8, 1.9 seconds for like 10, 11, 12 laps. So that's usually an indication that you're both at least running the same pace, of course. But, that's also not letting the guy ahead get away and running at his own pace. So I thought he's saving a bit. He knows he has a more durable front tire, and with 5 laps to go, start to reel him in and get P1 back again. So that was my I believe that was his strategy. So yeah, to answer your question in a short way, yeah, I think he would have gone for the win.
Okay, that's interesting. Matt, do you reckon he was sitting there preserving? You reckon he could have done it?
When I got to lap 7, yeah, absolutely. I 100% knew the strategy was the medium tire would be strong late, and you would see him just shadow Acosta, and then as both as we saw, but as the softs began to really go off, lap time wise, he would make his push, but unfortunately we were robbed of the proof of it by the puncture. But then I look at where did all the rest of the medium fronts finish?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
struggled. Bezzecchi didn't really make much progress and wasn't. Marini wasn't looking great either. So yeah, and this is what I find really impressive about Bagnaia's race was he seemed to be the only one who could make it work. And I was just saying how unadaptable or sensitive he may be. Well, he's just disproven me there. Like he was really making it work. And it was lap 12 when he picked up the puncture. I think it was lap 13 when he started getting the warning sign. And that's when Acosta passed him. But he held on until lap 18 and wasn't hemorrhaging pace. And I think that in itself is super, super impressive because he's got a tyre pressure warning. Obviously, the bike's feeling a bit squiffy by this point and is not feeling great. And it was only lap 18. So he survived 6 laps. And they're long old laps around Malaysia as well until he had to pull off. So I think that was really a massive, massive shame for him because I would love to see him come back through. So I'm kind of inclined to agree with you guys. I think he could have maybe made the strategy work because he said himself he was feeling pretty okay sitting there seeing Alex going away, and yet the last 5 laps would have been go time and he could have actually gone for it. So yeah, it's annoying that we didn't get a chance to see it. It's going to be fascinating in Portimao to see which Bagnaia bike combination turns up, whether he's going to be good or whether he's going to be nowhere again. But yeah, quite importantly, he's been robbed a little bit. He's actually lost out. He'd regained P3 in the championship again from Bezzecchi, and now this has caused him to lose it and is now 5 points back from Bezzecchi because Bezzecchi was having a bit of a nightmare this weekend, and it wasn't looking too good for him as well. So one thing you can do to cure our nightmares is to go and give the show a bit of a like and maybe a subscribe on YouTube. Or if you're an audio-only listener, then maybe give us a favourable rating on your podcast platform of choice. Perhaps you'd like to get in touch and give us a bit of feedback to tell us how bad we are or how beautiful I am. It's all good. You can email us at missedapexmoto@gmail.com. That's missedapexmoto, all one word, @gmail.com. And we do try to reply to all of the emails, so keep them coming in. Okay, on to our third topic then, and I want to talk a bit about Johan Mir and Honda. On the podium again. Is that like 2 podiums in 4 races? Yes, he binned it out of P4 in the sprint, but Jules, I'm actually beginning to really love how hard he's riding that bike and battling on it.
Yeah, Joan Mir is the guy with by far the most crashes this season. I think he had that same achievement last season as well, by the way. But he's crashed 29 times now. So that means that on average, you go down every Grand Prix weekend, and every other Grand Prix weekend, you add another crash to that as well. But yeah, I mean, the guy is obviously really on a knife's edge with this bike. And, you know, that can mean two things. Or the bike is unrideable, but I think we can see the Honda is not unrideable anymore, you know, given the results and the positions they qualify and they race in. So he's just really, seeing where the limits of this bike are, and he's got nothing to lose. So, you know, another crash to him, as long as it's not severe, it doesn't really matter. I think he's really helping the development of this bike further in this way, in a race trim. You know, Luca Marini is a really sensible guy, really good with data, really good at explaining the technical stuff, the feels, etc. And João Mir is just a very fast rider. I mean, former world champion. And, you know, if he keeps this up, and it goes for both of them, but if he keeps this up, this second half of the season form, so to say, I mean, he could be a really interesting rider to have an eye on for the next season, because these guys, I mean, behind the Ducatis and arguably the Aprilias, you could just as well say Honda are the third team now instead of KTM.
Yeah, okay. So I will take minor exception, but I won't blame you for it. There are no former world champions. Once you're a world champion, you're always a world champion. And you know who taught me that lesson? Jenson Button.
Who?
Jenson Button. Try introducing him as a former world champion and see what happens.
Oh, did he sting you?
No, not me. Somebody else did it while I was in the room. But
Okay,
I digress.
enough Formula One references.
I digress only
Thank
to tell that particular story, so everyone knows I was once in a room with Jenson Button. I like the fact that in a race where all the positions seemed locked down, Mir could genuinely make me nervous the last 2 laps, wondering if he was going to get to the podium or not. So right away, thank you very much for no matter where you are in the race, it's always will he or won't he with him. But it was also interesting to see him kind of in the cool down room. And I'm kind of with Jules on this one. He has almost a Marquez like ability to just, or maybe Miller, you'd say, just to entirely turn his brain off and just say, okay, I'm keeping up with that guy till I get to the end, or the bike goes out from under me, and I don't really care which one it is. Like, I have no investment in this at all, other than I'm going as fast as I can all the time.
Yeah, I think we call them screen biters, or they take your brain out and just bite the screen or the fairing and just to drag a lap time out of it. And you could really see that in how he's riding that Honda on the front end. And this is exactly what we used to see Marquez do on the Honda, like dragging it to results and overriding it and crashing it loads because it looks like a nightmare. But one thing I noticed about the Honda, they weren't getting absolutely spanked on the straights as much as I expected them to. You could really see the Yamaha, and some of the battles he was having with like Quartararo and Morbidelli, it was brilliant. He was fighting so hard with them, and he was jamming it all on the front end on the Honda, but they weren't getting rinsed as bad on the straights as they were before. So definite signs of progress. But I'm a bit like you, Matt. I wasn't sure if he was going to finish the race or not, because some of the shapes the bike he was pulling, and his in particular, I think it was versus Aldeguer, was it, into turn 1, where he pulls across the outside of him and pulls it down. That was my move of the weekend. It was absolutely incredible, and we're so used to seeing him in crash qual. Like, yes, he binned it out of P4 in a sprint because, again, I think he was overriding the bike, and he wasn't catching Acosta, because I was keeping an eye close on the gap for Acosta, whether he could catch to see if he could get the podium. But he ended up inheriting the podium from Bagnaia in the end, which, I don't know, the amount of luck and the amount of crashes that he's had, and he's been trying so hard this year, I think he'll take that. So it's really, really good to see Honda, and particularly Mir, doing well, because I've slagged him off so much. I say slagged him off. I've always make fun that he has his customary crash, and as Jules said, the crash stats are absolutely insane. But someone else was battling with, and we haven't spoken too much, is I want to give Acosta a little bit of love as well in this. So he himself inherited the podium in the sprint, but then P2 in the Grand Prix, Matt, and he made a really interesting comment. He said he was really angry after warm-up. He was like P14 and lost, and decided to go opposite to the team and said, look, listen to me, I'll take it on the chin. It'll be my fault if it goes wrong, but let's go the opposite. Let's basically get rid of a load of electronics coming out the final corners, which I found amazing.
Oh, yeah, no, you mean his profanity-laced, irritation with the deep state nanny gadgets on his bike? You're gonna kill me, but it reminded me very much, because we are talking about Honda, of that time in Spa, where the Honda Power Unit's map didn't even recognize that Alonso had gone through a turn.
We talking about F1 again?
But it's Honda, to be fair. I only brought it up because Honda and electronics, to me, has that connection where they are very techy and it's very, very good. But when it goes wrong, and that's what he said. He said, look, I'm getting to these corners and the engine is doing the same thing every time. It's cutting power because the engineer has calculated something. But what you always have to understand, the reason in simulators you have a rider or a driver in the loop is because they do things no computer program thinks of.
And MotoGP, this is much more prolific than four wheels. It's in the rider's hands again. And this electronic change put his soft rear tire management back into his right hand.
And, speaking of things being in the rider's hand, we could mention the total lack of a ride height device on Bagnaia when he smashed the sprint. I was like, why did you even bother to use your ride height device? You were faster without it, weren't you? So
well, yeah, we'll skip back to that because that's an amazing point. I completely and utterly forgot about that. A nice one, but usually I hate it when you flip back to things. But you've done a good one there, Trumpets, because that's amazing, and they're going to be banned in 2027. It can't come soon enough, in my opinion. But just goes to show, is this something now they might be trying? Maybe in Portimao, will they just disable the rear ride height device? Because he said he just had incredible traction.
Yeah, well, I mean, I tell you what, after that, at least for the shorter race and outside of the start where you have to have it to have a good start, I would completely say, why don't you go do a little race pace run, see what happens? Because sure, we've already been pretending that the ride height is the problem anyway. Maybe if you just don't use it at all, it's going to be better for you than if you do use it.
Yeah, that's incredible. But someone who was definitely using it was Acosta. You can see how low that KTM gets and firing out of the corners. And he did really well with the tyre management. So, Jules, KTM have really struggled chewing their tyres this year, but looked like Pedro had kind of got that under control.
Yeah, but the weird thing was that during the sprint on Saturday, he still had that problem, and he dropped back a little bit. And it's the thing that cost him a good position at Phillip Island, and they've been struggling with all season really. Something made it work on the Sunday because Acosta got to P2. I had to think for a bit, P2. But also, Bastianini, who, as we mentioned earlier in the episode, qualifying 19th, and he finished 7th. And we know Bastianini has a Sunday pace, no pace on Friday, hardly any on Saturday, but then on the Sunday. But I mean, I thought it was really, really interesting to see. Paul, he crashed on the Sunday race, but still during qualifying, he was up there in the top 10, if I'm not mistaken. So something clicked there. And as interesting it will be to see what Bagnaia does at Portimao, it's going to be interesting to see if being it late, if KTM has solved this problem, because that could make them all of a sudden, especially with Acosta, really interesting player.
And this is sort of something that I do love because Pedro said, I just said, turn that off, trust your rider. Now they have an entire race's worth of data. And I will say, just in the broader sense, that if your rider or your driver is fighting what is essentially the traction control, yeah, you are going to destroy your tires extremely rapidly. And if I'm a data or electronics engineer, I'm looking at what Acosta did and I'm saying, okay, how can I help him do that, but more of that? Because I'm beginning to get the sense that whatever they were doing was actually fighting the way the riders were trying to use the bike to extract the lap time we obviously saw. And look, what were they? Did he not run soft?
Yeah.
55C track didn't run out of tire. A KTM? Are you kidding me? Yeah, no, they've unlocked something, and it'll be down to the engineers to make sure it gets applied across all the riders.
Yeah, that's really good, and that's just jogged my memory. I've done an old Formula One reference. I'm going to reference an old MotoGP thing here, and this reminds me of maybe turning electronics off and getting better tire wear and better speed. Of hark back to the late '90s, I think it was 1999. Gary McCoy on the Red Bull Yamahas, and this is in the era where they were going for the 16.5-inch rear tires, and basically Gary McCoy, if those MotoGP veterans will remember him as being crazy, smoking the rear tyre, sideways, completely out of control going into the corners. And they figured out that in the late 90s that Gary McCoy, if you span the rear tyre a little bit, you kind of heat it up and not really heat the carcass up too much. But if you span it a lot, you'd only heat the surface and not really the carcass up much, and you'd actually then get better pace. And this is that weird era, only lasted for like a year or two, of Gary McCoy like spinning the rears up, and then everyone tried to start copying it and using the 16.5-inch rear tire. And this really reminds me of this, Matt.
Well, I love that you brought it up because, I was talking before the show about how I've been found this huge just cache of old MotoGP and motorcycle. Well, one of the documentaries was about that year, and they talked
Oh,
about that. They said what he was doing, what they realized was that if you really spin the rear wheel up, you're only overheating the surface of it. You're not engaging the carcass at all. So you're not overheating the tire. It's just the surface and it's temporary. And what that lets you do, because you essentially lose all of the traction of the rear, it lets you turn the bike so much more quickly and easily. But they said that the rear was going like 60 mile an hour, not kilometers. That would be about 100 km an hour faster than the front coming out of those
brilliant.
turns. And so not only do you turn quicker, but once you got the bike straight, it's just like getting shot out of a catapult onto the straight. Now, the issue with it became, as I'm sure you will want to say, eventually everybody did it, but when it bites wrong, you get high sides. And so you begin to see a lot of those.
Yeah, and hopefully we don't see too many of those sort of moving forward. So I'd love less electronics. I always think is fantastic. So let's get rid of those electronics. And that was a nice little trip down memory lane, wasn't it? So who are we going to talk about next? Some honourable mentions, or dishonourable, shall I say, was Aprilia not working at all at this track. And Bezzecchi, really. Bezzecchi, I think this is quite poignant, got nailed by Iagura. Iagura was the top Aprilia. So Bezzecchi on that medium front tyre, really struggling. And Agura, nice to see him. He's been bitten. Great start to his season. Bitten a few times, had that hand injury, and now is coming back strong. So P10, which is pretty good for him. And someone who has been really good as well, I want to talk about, a bit of a stealth, Morbidelli. 2 P4s, and this snatched P6 in the championships off his teammate. But there was, I'm going to coin a new phrase, and that's ICBM. It's not intercontinental ballistic missile. It's an intercontinental ballistic Morbidelli that Fabio Quartararo found in the final corner. Oof, Matt, that was a rough old move he put on Fabio.
You would have loved to have a camera inside the helmet just to see his facial expression when that bright yellow VR came flashing right up against his chassis there. Yeah, and it's interesting too because he, even on the 24, has been having similar issues. It's been reported across all the bikes, but it is wild to me that between him and Digi, what is it, like a point now in the
Yeah,
riders
it's really
table?
close.
It's so very close, and I think it's easy to dismiss his performance because of his occasionally ham-handed riding style.
That's a very kind way of putting it.
But at the end of the day, he still has the speed to properly play at the sharp end of the field, and it was on full display this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. P4, he has been absolutely solid. And yeah, he's winning that intra VR46 team battle. And let's not forget, he's missed a round or two via injury. He missed Bruno because I think he had the concussion head injury after Sachsenring.
Sachsenring.
Yeah, it was a nice one. And and he's had some rough old crashes, like some real rough old crashes this year as Frankie. So he's still going really well. So toast to him. Something that wasn't going quite so well was the Yamaha V4 with Augusto Fernandez having another wild card. And it seems like the project's gone backwards a little bit.
Yeah, it's a bit odd because, you'd think that they would like to, put this project under more stress to see how it will behave in competitive circumstances. But they still have this engine turned down. So Augusto Fernandez was riding there, not being able to full throttle it down the big straights in Malaysia, which it seems a bit weird because why be so cautious? It's not like you have a lot of opportunities until the Valencia test where Fabio Quartararo will want to know, is this bike going to get me any more up the rankings than the one I have right now?
Yeah, and you mentioned Quartararo, Matt, because it was quite interesting. I think it was because Fernandez had a couple of crashes over the weekend, obviously, and I think that was a result of maybe trying to overcompensate for the lack of power and push. And there was one moment, I think it was down at turn 1, and Quartararo went by and basically exclaimed to him and was shaking his head. So Quartararo does not seem like a fan of this project.
Well, yeah. I mean, this reminds me of the drivers who test any tire that's not the softest, grippiest tire and then complain about it not being as fast as they want. But then when you stick them on it in a race and it dies after 2 laps, they complain about how it doesn't last as long. I mean, riders want to go fast. Anything not going fast I'm not interested in it. What's curious to me is from an engineering point of view, the main goal of repackaging your power unit into the same format as everybody else who's doing better than you is to be able to get the same kind of performance out of it, and specifically their inability to use the power at the rear of the bike. They're limited by the construction of the engine, by the way it sits in the bike. They can't get the right height, what do they call it, the pen height or whatever. They can't get it any lower, which limits what they can do with the chain, which limits everything, which means that they're limited with the amount of push they can put on the back of the bike to keep that contact patch in touch with the asphalt when they apply the throttle. So if I'm testing that, I don't need to know how powerful this engine can be. I can stick a single cylinder on a dyno and work that out. What I need to know is if I have this and repackage it, is it solving the problem that I really need it to solve, which is fundamentally allowing the power to be delivered in the same way that all of my competitors are. And that's one of the main reasons why I'm losing this race down the straights.
I just fear for Yamaha that Fabio isn't that patient anymore, because he came on Thursday already, sort of threatening the team that it's good to start the 26 season knowing what the future holds. And if I don't have the bike to do it, I will move, of course. And actually, adding to that, I want to see who have the motivation to really win. So he's putting all kinds of pressure on that team to deliver him the bike at the Sepang test in February, and probably already at Valencia in November, something promising. Or he's off, and he's such hot property for 27. So I found that really interesting that he, kind of pulled this pin in a weekend where they're testing the V4. But then on the other hand, last time he was, so clear in his wording. Like the next day he signed this Yamaha extension that, you know, delivered him a lot of money. So let's see what it's worth. But I'm curious to see how patient Fabio is going to be with this. And if so far he doesn't seem impressed.
No, that's a good point, because he wasn't enamored when he first rode it either. He basically just slagged it off. All the other riders saying there's positive for this progress, and he was like, meh, still the same problems. And like you said, George, he's been super negative about it. He's been super, super negative about it. And we really hope that we can get a competitive Quartararo on a competitive bike, Matt.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Miller is the guy that I would ask about this bike, because he was the one that I heard explaining the deficiencies of the current power unit. Yeah, if it's not fast, everyone's going to hate it. But if it solves the problem and lets them be fast at the test, then everyone's going to love it. So fair enough. Quartararo is a guy who doesn't always explain even what's going on with the current bike correctly.
No, that's a good point. Like, he's their number one rider. You know, he's got the results for him, but Miller is known as being a fantastic development rider as well. So that's a damn good point, actually. Listen to Miller. It's going to be pivotal what's happening at the end of season tests. So what is happening at the end of the season is the championship standings, and there's not much going on here apart from Bezzecchi holding on to P3, reclaiming it back, having a 5-point lead over Bagnaia, and Frankie Morbidelli moving up into 6th in that intra VR46 battle. So as always, we'd like to finish with a couple of awards. Rider of the weekend. Matt, you're going to steal somebody's as ever, so you might as well go first.
I always steal everyone's rider of the weekend, but it's got to be Alex for me. Lockdown P2. That was that was a lot of pressure for him to carry. And his maturity this season has been impressive. So fully deserves it. Nice job. And that move on Acosta too was just like no hesitation.
Yeah, that was mega. That's a really good one. Jules, who was yours?
I'm gonna give Frankie a vote of confidence. I mean, securing 2 P4s on that VR46, and you can say as much as you can say in favor of Frankie, you can say something against him. But I thought it was really steady performance again, and that move on Fabio. I mean, you gotta love that guy for that. You know, I mean, there's only one rider who's gonna shove it like that. So yeah, Frankie for me.
Yeah, fair play. I'm actually going to give mine to Bagnaia. I think Bagnaia was amazing in the sprint. I think he was doing super well in the Grand Prix, managing that medium tyre, and to hang on to a delaminating or deflating rear tyre for 6 laps at that pace. Hats off Pecco, and please can we bring this Pecco every weekend so we get to see some better racing at the front. So, moments of the weekend. Jules, what was your moment of the weekend?
I'm going to the race for that and give it to a moment from Fermin Aldeguer. He crashed out, but a couple of laps before he crashed out, he had this moment in turn 9 where Pecco crashed out of the sprint last season. It was a really slow turn, left-handed. And he actually put the bike on the side. You could hear it scratch over the tarmac, and then somehow he managed to get that bike upright again, and continued until he pushed the limits too far a couple of moments later. But I thought that was a really cool moment. And
he did it twice on consecutive laps as well. Like, he did it one lap, we saw it, and then the next lap he did exactly the same thing again. It's all gone, son.
Yeah, it's the kind of stuff that we applaud Marc Marquez, for instance, because of things like that in recent history. So I thought that was really craftsmanship.
Yeah, fair play. That's a good one. Matt, what was your moment of the weekend?
Well, I'm going to go back to our qualifying discussion. And I got to say, Aldeguer trying to kill his team manager with his bike, bringing it back to the pits. Yeah. So this is hilarious. No one saw Jules' face when I said Alex Marquez, because clearly I stole his despite not looking at the notes. And Kyle Kyle is no longer buying me a pint next time I go to England to visit. It's all on me because I've clearly stolen that one from him too. So, but it was just fantastic. It will live forever on social media, that clip of him. And then what really gets me is his mechanic coming after him with his hands up in the air in that classic Italian gesture of, what were you? I was right there. You could have put it in my hands. What were you thinking? It just so I love MotoGP for these moments.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, that was mine. You're going to steal. So I'm going to go with mine on the Johan Mir move on Aldeguer going into turn 1 and pulling it across the front of him, because that was absolutely amazing. What would also be amazing is if you can go and follow my panel. Jules, where can people get you?
You can find me on Blue Sky, and the handle is Jules on Racing.
Nice one. Matt, where can people get you?
At MattPT55 on pretty much all your socials.
Awesome. Why not give the show a like on your podcast platform, or subscribe and a like on YouTube as well? We'll be back again in 2 weeks to review the penultimate round. Boo, only 2 rounds left, which is the Portuguese Grand Prix at the fantastic Portimao circuit. As always, thanks for listening to Missed Apex MotoGP.